Hi everyone. Muchas gracias, Caressa Nguyen, mayon ayonako. Um, Hi everyone. My name is Caressa Nguyen. I'm the community outreach lead for Conservation X Labs and a citizen of the Ion Band of Miwok Indians. Today we are here for the second webinar in a series of webinars. This is Igniting Innovation. Um, for the Fire Grand Challenge. I'm going to share a bit of background on the Fire Grand Challenge, and we have two amazing women here to share stories about fire and their work on fire. They're both cultural practitioners who are rematriating the land. So I'll go ahead and share some information on the challenge, and then we'll get started. I'm also a mother. Uh, so when so the Fire Grand Challenge is an open innovation competition that seeks to identify the scale solutions that bring together Indigenous, rural, and place-based knowledge with fire tech and other forms of innovation to decrease destructive fire. One. Um, so our challenge themes are scaling ecosystem stewardship and synthesizing diverse knowledge. The open application period runs until December 2nd. We're looking for both technical applicants with ideas for solutions and partner communities who can help co-develop and field test the solutions with the technical applicants. That's why I think Allie would be a great applicant. She's an ideas factory. So the innovator teams who are named as finalists will be able to participate in the challenge's 9-month testing and acceleration program, where you'll be connected with technical experts, partners, follow-on funders to help scale your solutions and broaden your impact. We'll drop some links in the chat for more information on the challenge and how to apply. If you have any questions at all, we're happy to talk with you by email or Zoom. Myself, Liam, who is the manager of the Fire Grand Challenge, he's a wealth of information. See the Calendly link in the chat to book a time, or you can also reach out over email. Lastly, our next webinar will be October 24th, and it'll focus on the evaluation criteria on the challenge. So tune in for more information on how to craft a winning application. So to get into the webinar, the theme of the challenge, or well, the theme not of the challenge, but the theme of the webinar is rematriation. And so I'm excited to introduce you um, to Diana Almendariz and um, and Ali Mader's Knight, who are both based out of California. Um, to share a little bit about Diana Almendariz, who is an honored elder, cultural practitioner, basket weaver. Diana is a storyteller who sees the continuation of these traditional stories impact her work in helping manage landscapes with cultural burning. She currently works with UC Davis researchers in Yolo County to manage cultural burns at the Tending and Gathering Garden in Cache Creek Conservatory. She's an expert in using fire to bring balance to ecosystems that benefit native plants, animals, and people. The results of these cultural burns show a healthier ecosystem and provides high quality materials for Indigenous basket weavers. And I've had the honor of attending one of her fires actually with Ali. And it was a powerful experience that has really inspired my passion for fire, because I grew up learning about it from my elders, but I was thinking recently about how like I hadn't had a lot of experience attending cultural burning because, before there were all these permitting, like I guess there was green tape or red tape, with like permitting that prevented us from, really cultural burning to to prevent us from being able to cultural burn as we needed. Um, and now it's like we're I feel like I'm hearing about a cultural burn every few weeks or so. Um,
Yes.
and it's and Diana and Ali, they have really helped to break down those barriers for Indigenous peoples to steward our lands in the way that it needs. So that's a bit about Diana. And Ali Mater's Knight is a Machupta tribal member, mother of five, and traditional basket weaver based in Chico, California. She's been recognized as a Machupta by her tribe, the Machupta tribe, as a master TEK practitioner and works to form partnerships for federal forest stewardship, contracting, tribal restoration programs on public lands. She has been a TEK practitioner for over 20 years, over 25 years, I think now, right? Um, Collaborating on environmental education, land restoration projects with Chico State University, the city of Chico, Tehama County Resource Conservation District, and more. She serves on the Tribal Relations Strategic Planning and Implementation Committee for the U.S. Forest Service in Region 5. And in March of 2022, she testified to the House of Representatives Environmental Oversight Committee subcommittee on the merits of TEK and tribally led workforce development to restore California forest resilience and address the problem of catastrophic wildfires. In 2009, she helped to plan and establish Verbena Fields, a unique 17-acre interactive food forest and interpretive park in North Chico to educate about the rich ecological heritage of the Machupta people through weekly community tending workshops. And these women, they do much more than what I've just listed. So I want to pass it to either Diana or Ali, whoever feels inclined um, to share about your experience working with fire, about rematriating the land, whatever you feel compelled to share.
Okay.
Go ahead, Diana.
Good morning. How are you? Uh-oh, Carissa is gone.
I'm here. I'm
Okay.
here.
So, did you just want us to, um, can you start us off on maybe a thought? Because we just got back from the other um, meeting and it was pretty good and a lot to deal with. Yeah, well, good way, in a good way. But anyway, um, do you want me to just go ahead and start talking on? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, sharing story.
Okay. Yeah, well, my story when it comes to this is that it was always there, but to burn, but the laws weren't there for it. The living situation in a city doesn't look kindly on that, and and so it wasn't. I think I kind of got programmed living in the city all my life. That's how it is too. I didn't dislike it. I thought it was important, but I didn't think that it would fit. And basically, within a city, it's hard for that thing to happen because everybody gets suspicious of fire. And so when it came to working and being involved at the Tenny and Gathering Garden at Cache Creek Conservancy in Woodland, up just right outside Woodland, um, that it came up again. The question of burning and that whole garden needs to be burned. And at that point, I was still feeling a little, you know, still feeling a little worried about it. But when we heard word from Cal Fire and seeing the law that was created with Don Hankins and knowing Don Hankins and knowing when he worked there tending a gathering garden, that's what his aim was too. He did his studies inside the forest here and worked alongside us on the panel, the steering committee panel. So I got a lot of like you're saying, kind of stories that you need to hear, and talks, and I could ask any question at that time. So anyway, it made it more open. And so when the situation came, it made my mind more relaxed to do it, still a little afraid of it. But when CAL FIRE came along and we started working on that, and talking about it, I would have the Native American Studies class of Beth Rose Middleton come in every year. And so when they came in, um, it turned into a whole situation of a new class called Keepers of the Flame. And so I still do the Native American classes and other classes. I work with a lot of professors, and so it finally turned into a class specific for this. So together, me, Beth Rose, and Chris Adlam and Zach Emerson kind of molded this together, the original plan. And we kept tight talking about it to make sure we can do it right. Well, of course, Beth Rose was there, but that's basically how it started. And it gave me the okay, in my heart to say, yeah, this is okay. This is all right. This is important. And this was years ago, 20 years ago that I'm talking about. So anyway, so it's been in my mind for a long time. And after seeing the forest fires, after hearing of people being burned alive in cars, that was the most horrible thing I could think of. In fact, me and my cousin kind of got reminded by it. I'm talking about Pam Gonzalez. We were reminded by when our people were burned alive. So it brought a lot of emotion that's not, it kind of reminded me of the hellfire and religions too. So I'm like, that's not the message we need to get to people. We need to turn this around. We need to just do it and get it done. And everybody, of course, in the Keepers of the Flame class creation, we're at that point too. And so we were actually able to get some fire on the ground for the first time in, I think it was 2017. And it was really eye-opening. There are many things that happened that um, surprised me, like the smoke didn't bother me. I've got asthma, but that fire and the control fire or the cultural fire, you're burning native plants. There was something in which my body kind of um, adapted to that very quickly. And I don't think I've ever coughed during a burn. But besides that point, it being healthy and it being usable, it's just no brainer. We got to keep doing this every year. So we did. And with the Keepers of the Flame, it brought the students along, which was awesome because those students still are around helping, like lifetime students with me. And it's been really great to have that ability to talk about fire, in a good way, of course, and talk about how the plants reacted afterwards, talk about how the animals react afterwards, in which I think is one of the most important things because, the animals are the ones that I want to spread the seed, when it comes to any fire and what we do. I would rather have the animals spread it. So create enough food in the tending garden to where the animals can eat it and then go out and do their business, and so it has changed the nature area there, since 2017. It's changed the whole nature area to animals depending on us coming out now. And it's really sweet how when we start a fire, the hawks are right there ready to catch any mice and everything or running away. So it was really a eye-opening thing. And now there's a more of a chase that I'm going for now, and in which how water and fire collide and how they work together. That's a really important thing, in which I think is time I need to cry out on how important getting invertebrates and getting ash and char in the water is. because those are the cleaners and the filter. And it's also the homes of the invertebrates and what the bacteria that grows on tule and microscopic animals that grow on tule. They live their whole life, needing char and ash. And it's a whole new, how do you use this, question that I get, and so how do you use ash? How do you use fire? It's a whole different sphere. But I think using it and demonstrating it is better spent time for me. I know people will catch on. And with guidance, of course, like I said, we got this class, Keepers of the Flame. And now we have fire ecology, which is going on. So those people are coming out to check out the fires too. And with Danny Manning doing what he does on his side, he's already out teaching people in classes. And it's really great. And oh yeah, he has a fire ecology class. So that's wonderful. And there are other fire ecology classes too. So I can't say how much I feel about this situation where everybody wants this and knows. And plus the messages we got at the meeting yesterday were, I'm not sure exactly what political characters were there. I don't want to misquote or anything, but they really said things like, why, almost leading to the point of, why haven't we been doing this? And it's like, oh, remember your country locked us up, for burning, and our people became so afraid of burning, you didn't want to talk about it. If you lived in a place outside where no one would see it, then you could do it. But it was a real huge controversy. So, like I say, with the non-use of tule and the non-use of fire, we have 200 years of this land being ignored. I've been out in the forest gathering on my own before, before the fires, and I've seen a lot of invasives starting to creep in. And there's still a lot of native vegetation out there, a lot, but it needs to be taken care of. Bear grass, all those specific plants, they need heat. And if you don't give them that, what they need, things overgrow. They grow fuller, thicker. Deer grass grows real thick and it looks like, just grass is all dried together. That's because it's not been taken care of. So that's the beautiful thing about fire. Once you put it on the ground, then we're expected to keep doing it. And I'm like, wow, that's perfect. Perfect for me. And I will burn things in my garden, maybe each area every other year. I'll burn one part of it, then the next part the next year, because I want them to continue to flourish, and if they're at a certain stage after a 1 year burn, I want to be able to view it, and see that stage. That's where I get pictures of plants coming in next to old plants or new plants that have grown in a longer period. So I have a lot of great photos that way too. So the tending and gathering garden has really been the focus. And I know if Bertha Mitchell was here, she witnessed a lot of the growth of the plants and um, very much enjoying it. And but also being um, a little upset about the fact that we planted things in squares, like regular farming. And so she'd say, something's not right. And she'd say, the only way that Bertha Mitchell could say this, not right, bounds her head down like this, like a gavel. It was wonderful. And so I can remember her words because they were so emotional. And one time I took a group of basket weavers down into the sedge bed together. And so Bertha was there, and everybody kept bringing their prepared materials to her. And she would take it, but after a while she's going, this isn't good enough material for me. I need it. It needs to be better for me to work with. And Sam, a basket weaver, was there, and Sam's going, well, I can make little baskets out of it. That's fine with me. She's going, then you take it. No, I don't want to take yours. And there's a back and forth of the grass. Is really funny. And then it was like Sam finally just goes, well, okay, I'll take it. The way she said it was a really funny time. But um, it's that adjustment, of looking forward to good material and waiting for it. And that's what she was doing. But at the same time, she was telling me something the way it's growing, it's just not right. So it's something I've always had on my mind. So we're at a point now where it's growing on its own, and it's really nice to see it and be able to allow the plants to move on their own, quite literally. You need a time elapsed camera to see that, because it does take time. But the sedge actually moved from a lower space, right, even with the waters, and moved up higher, like maybe about 5, 10 feet higher in some places on its own, because that's where it wants to be. And that's what Bertha always said. This needs to grow on its own, not in squares. She was worried about them not being able to get outside of the squares, you know. But it was really a wonderful way of seeing that relationship, between her and the plants and the garden and everything. So Bertha Mitchell was a real significant person to have around, and I know she would be so happy to know that we're doing fire. And the last thing, I'll probably mention is that, Kathy Wallace, who we lost, that was one of my good friends. Um, she always wanted it burned again. And I was like, I don't think it's the time yet. I don't think I'm ready for that, because of the willow. She wanted the willow burned because it's too buggy. The willow we particularly have is too buggy. So those are the steps we need to make next, is getting out that forest and start burning some of these things. But there's always backburns you have to do before you get to that place. So just a little worried, it's 125 acres that I don't want to lose all at once. So I'm just being very careful. And I know the fire is being put in our hands, and we just need to be really careful because fire is a very powerful being, and it it is more powerful than anyone on the earth that you know of. Fire is way more powerful than that. And if you allow fire to get a taste of what it wants to burn, it could get away from you really easily, because it has a mind of its own. And I've seen that. But I'm also ready for it. So that's what's very important and what everyone needs to know is quit. No, you're going to have to get over the thought that, oh, I want to burn. Yay. Just not so much so excited, but I want to take care of it and get a good burn, and that's why we call this fire Leok Po, good fire, because we're working at that to make sure it's a healthy fire, and give people the idea of what a healthy fire looks like. But I'm not trying to say that some people out there are doing it really wrong. For the most part, I see some great fires out there. But if you need advice, if you need extra hand, announce it so those people will come. Open up that door for them. So, because you never know how much you need. And you know what? Sometimes I think people's intuitive systems, they know what they need. They know what's needed, and so they might think that those people are doing it first time on the land. I think I'll go join them. That's not a bad idea, just because more hands, more eyes are better. And that's really important thing to keep in mind is how powerful fire is. You know, some some religious made fire their total punishment for you, and I'll tell you that's not true, but I mean, I'm talking about that being a bad thing. Fire, it isn't a punishment. I guess the only ultimate punishment we had with fire was not allowing us to burn. We needed to burn a long time ago, not just now. And I will take those big fires that had happened as it had to happen. There was no other way to prepare for that, because we wouldn't have got permission. And it just happened because of non-maintenance, no management skills along with fire. So, but that's where we're at to make the change, as we're at this point now where we are allowed to go out there. So let's keep it controlled. We can control our fire. And but I'm not saying controlled fire, not a controlled fire, but a cultural fire. let it remain that way so we can keep our eyes on it better, instead of, having our whole sight view being blocked by any type of material you have to wear that is over too much to do, so little time. But it's always nice to be protected too. So, but the ones that kind of cover your eyesight, that those are the ones that I worry about when you're not able to have that outside view of things. So um, things have grown a lot since we first started in 17, and um, I look forward to joining other fires as well. And at the point now, ours is a great place to learn how to do a fire, a cultural burn, because it has a southwest blow of wind. It's deep in a hole. The water level is right there. You got water right next to you, and um, you have a higher levee above you. So it kind of helps with our burning that way. So we can be pretty much on the spot burning because of those things, knowing the direction of the wind. And like my one of my leaders said yesterday was, you got to know that fire too. It's not just the material. No, you have to know the wind. What's your wind like here? And so that's really something that I had taken into consideration too. But I like how he said that. There's so much more that you need to know besides just putting fire on the ground is the wind. Keep your eye on the wind. And don't think that you can always trust the weatherman on that. You just can't tune into the weatherman and say, oh, well, it's going to be good today. Because, things have their own mind, how they're going, what's going to happen. It's good to listen to it, but I usually put my feet up on the ground and take a good look around at how the clouds are blowing around. But like I said, the most important part is bringing good food for the deer too, or all the animals, because the animals are struggling. Well, we got half, not maybe in 1960, said we had half the amount of animals we had in 1960. That's what it is now. And I'm sure it dropped more because it's really hard for the animals. They're getting taken out of their sources and getting pushed more in the city. It's happened to coyotes over and over where farm starts. And so the farm goes up, all the coyotes are dead. It's totally irresponsible wildlife management and land management. So I think I'll let you go with that because I don't want you to feel like I'm here to tell anybody off. I'm not doing that. We just need to be aware and up and handle that awareness with respect to fire, but also respect to your workers that are there. Because sometimes just being supportive helps, but also especially the hard work it is to make sure you keep your eye on that fire. So, and it is hard work because distractions happen. So you just got to keep eyes on things all the time, and more eyes is better, so it's always good to have more people out there. And um, thank you for inviting me here. And I hope to be able to add more to this if I can, if there's a question and answer time or something. So thank you.
Thank you so much for that. Um, I think we all can see that Diana is a wealth of knowledge. I learned a lot, and um, I also have follow-up questions.
Okay,
Um,
good. I
yeah,
like,
but we'll wait to the end.
yeah.
Okay. So next we'll be hearing from Ali Mater Knights.
Hi, hey Nani. My name is Ali Metters Knight. I'm a Mechoopda tribal member in occupied Mechoopda territory, which is also known as Chico, California. Um, I'm also Nomalaki Kankau and Wintu um, through my descendancy through this area in the valley. My great grandfather is Carl Delgado. He worked as a principal in Covelo and then worked throughout Lake County. And so part of his passion was also Indian education. Um, throughout, not only the school system, but, getting youth involved and educated on their culture and their traditions. So um, it's good to be a descendant and carrying on the legacy of my family through this. I will give you a little bit of background. Um, in 1998, I started basket weaving when I was in my early 20s. And excuse me, I started teaching outdoor education through a program called Kids and Creeks and our tribal youth program, all the way starting in 2001 up until like 2007. And through this program of teaching, I did a lot of outreach to all the local schools, and I was able to develop curriculums for what was traditional ecological knowledge, TEK. At that time, there wasn't the word TEK out there in 2007. I went actually in 2009 to a program called California Indian Manpower Consortium Entrepreneurship and Leadership. Program was a 6-month program, and I basically wrote business plan, 1 page. It was a business plan for workforce development utilizing traditional ecological knowledge, TEK, for climate change adaptation. And this was generally about creating a system and a way of putting tribes and their knowledge of the ecosystem above Western science for climate adaptation through the next era as a paradigm shift of how we work together. And so I really started to have to address since 2009. Now we're 2024. I went, traditional ecological knowledge was really used in Canada with First Nations. And so they had sponsored some classes out of a college called Haskell University in Kansas. And so I traced that TEK, traditional ecological knowledge verbiage, through them. And so I'm really glad to see California, especially Alaska, started picking it up a lot because they're right there with First Nations. But really, California picked up in the last 4 years utilizing TEK, traditional ecological knowledge, including the president through an executive order to the Secretary of Interior, all the major departments, USDA, which is, we would like to see you implement traditional ecological TEK through your contract agreements. And those contract agreements are under law. Those laws tend to be like, Tribal Forest Protection Act. That's under USDA. Under the Forest Protection Act under USDA, they can actually create agreements with tribes and tribal entities. Secretary of Interior is really strict, only federally recognized tribes only under Secretary of Interior's, BIA programs. But under USDA, it's open through the strategic planning, as I say, through this agreement that these agreements can be made with non-federally recognized tribes or tribal entities. And so that's really opened the door for co-stewardship programs all throughout California on federal land, BLM lands. And so that really, as I'm getting off on this tangent, that really changed my course of what I was doing. I went to my tribe. I asked if we can get on the tribal, basically the farm bill, the tribal farm bill is under the USDA, and kind of veer ourselves and see about that. I've been for the last, maybe 4 or 5 years, actually 5 years, pushing the co-stewardship under this agreement. And there's a couple laws that stand there. One of them is that there's a Supreme Court agreement that, those that tend the land for 20 years have really a lot of rights under the, Ammon Bundy case. And so I was like, these co-stewardship agreements for 20 years really make a huge difference for tribes and tribal entities. So that was some policy digging and sharing that kind of put me on a circuit on panels. They tested it. I went through, of course, talking to DC representatives. This is the religion. This is real. And so in that, I also got into land trust. So now I'm the executive director of California Open Lands, which is a land trust. So for the last 2 years, I'm dipping into land acquisitions. And so I don't work for a tribal land trust. I work for a non-tribal land trust, but I am tribal. And so I end up dealing with a whole pool of money that's not tribal, and I do a whole policies that are not, but able to utilize that to complement Indian country and to complement the partnerships that I make, um, basically looking at acquisitions. This is a different types of land back propositions that we look at where you have a land trust. I'm executive director. We have a board. We work together, and but all the land plans, the work plans on all of these preserves and conservations are reflected into TEK, traditional ecological methodologies. Then we do outreach. We got a huge, $500,000 grant for capacity building to go to different tribes who have workshops and kind of ameliorate community participation on these conservation lands with the tribe. And one of the key things we're also looking about is, renaming all this land. So typically with conservation land, as as executive director, I'm always interested. We're always slinging off the names of these preserves. Oh, that's Bickford. Oh, that's Merriam. That's Park. But all of these names are actually white men who recently acquired the property within the last 100 years or so, between the last 100 years. And they named the property after themselves. And now the conservation that's held in perpetuity for the time immemorial is held in their last name. So one of the reconciliations that I thought was really important was not only to put TEK methodologies of land management on there, but also walk to the tribe and say, okay, let's rename this land. And then whatever, let's get into this work plan, and make sure we have enough endowment, enough funding so that you can really utilize this land for traditional ecological knowledge and time immemorial. And then, it's on in for perpetuity. The money that we get to draw down to purchase this land, this unceded tribal land, is actually California funding. So I'm like, why not take money from the state that actually stole from us and actually take that money to get our land back rather than us using our own capital every time? So, and the co-stewardship agreement is in kind similar to that. So we've kind of set that off out. Those last 2 days, as we talked about, and going to the summits, we're talking to state and federal agencies about fire. My experience with fire is like, it's cultural fire. So I've gotten my red card out of necessity because it's required to burn on federal land, but there's a lot of hoops to jump through to do cultural burns on federal land. And it's actually the easiest to do cultural burns on private land or conservation land or preserves, because the board of directors or the landowners give permission, and that is just pretty much what covers you for your insurance bond that you need to the state that's brand new. So we have some cultural burns out there. Cultural burns are getting described a lot different depending on who's your practitioner. So even within my own tribe, we have prescribed burn folks that go straight by they're just like CAL FIRE. They follow all the state laws and regulations. And they're just like, we do prescribed burns. They put down drip torches. They do everything. They wear full PPE, and they are prescribed burns. I'm cultural burn. I wear a whole different PPE. I actually have a whole bunch of objectives that are not fuels management that are done under the prescribed burns. So the objectives under cultural burns are very significant. So one of the problems is that the right to fire is kind of like coming up almost like a coyote story right now. I don't know what CAL FIRE is, the coyote. I'm not going to start putting labels on any of these characters right now, or who's a protagonist, or, how that works. But let me explain how this really is from this side. So yesterday when I was talking to state and federal agencies, I said, look, what we have is fire and water have a relationship that go together. When we work on land, fire and water go together. We don't separate the two. So in order for us to get a creek to get healthy, to get water again, if it's suffering, we burn around the creek, we burn around the area, because in so many ways, even through the smoke of the good fire, We create clouds that create some, density for rain, but even more, even the act of burning in itself on that area brings and draws up the water to that place and makes it healthy again, because it's a place-based science of California's ecosystem that it responds that way. And because we were born, this is from millions of years of volcanic explosions and explosions and explosions and a lot of disruptions and fire. California's landscapes actually live on this like constant touching and disruption and catering, or I don't say catering, but tending to. And so with that, we have a policy within ourselves that fire and water, the right to fire and water, and even our own stories go together. So when when the fire is stolen, when the water is stolen, we try to steal them back so that we can put them together for the health of the land, because they belong together. And so when we talking to agencies like the state of California, they have CAL FIRE, they have California Department of Water. They are two different entities that never work together. Tribes, we are tired of assimilation. We don't want to model ourselves like the state of California. We are tired of being assimilated. Boarding school era is over. So why are we trying to wear and walk and talk like every federal and state agency if we have our own self-determination? So based on our self-determination, based on our autonomy, cultural fire gives us an identity that we belong on the land, and we also want a right to our fire and we want a right to our water, but we want them packaged together. Even though the state doesn't do it, and even though the feds don't do it, we're done with assimilating tribes and telling them that we have to do it the way they do it. We're going to try for acculturation. And so acculturation is when they meet us in the middle of the road. And what we could ask for is maybe fire and water together. Maybe we can throw some air in there. Maybe we can throw some minerals in there. All of these things, soil, all of this stuff is part of our TEK work plan every day, all day. Traditional ecological knowledge, traditional land tending, as we call it, native intelligence about the ecosystem is really the most superior knowledge that there is. And so we're getting recognized for it right now. And so we also have to also recognize that we also just survived a genocide 180 years ago. And so under programs like 30 by 30, and as we're working with states and we're trying to make these negotiations, tribal governments are trying to, capitalize and make what they can off of the TEK, knowledge, because it allows them to have a lot of funding through grants for their program. And so if they don't have a good knowledge of cultural objectives, they're just going to take down the money and then do what CAL FIRE wants, do what the state wants, which kind of like defeats the purpose of what we've all been fighting for this whole time, which is our own self-determination of land stewardship. And so what's really important right now is to educate folks on the knowledge of how we can work on the land through the 30 by 30 program as best as possible, but also push for that program to feed into all tribal nations and to have tribal nations feed into that, to the practitioners that lead this. You need to let the tribes lead the biodiversity movement going on in California and also compensate them for them. Because the best analogy that I can make when I'm sitting in a 30 by 30 and all of Sierra, like there is tons of organizations that are they don't have one tribal representative in there. They don't even recognize what tribal area, territory they hold all this land in. They will actually be submitting and taking the knowledge from TEK practitioners and putting it onto that land and then making huge profits and off of the crisis of land. And basically they're the problem that caused climate change, and now they're also siphoning and taking some of that, would you say, appropriating the knowledge from tribal practitioners without recognizing and letting us lead, which is, it's almost like taking half of the information. You're not going to really be able to effectively implement it without letting tribes and tribal practitioners lead 30 by 30 and all of the biodiversity efforts that take place in California. So I know there's a big summit coming up in California through biodiversity, and I hope to see a lot of folks there. I hope to be there. I'm going to be trying to be pushing tribes to be, tribes also need to work together. There's a lot going on, like Diane said, there's so much going on. There's a lot to do. But I'm looking forward to doing the best that I can do with everybody else. And just like I heard yesterday from Danny Manning, we're all on the port. And so when all of our boats are on the port, as the water rises, we all rise together. And so we all have to think about rising in together um, uh, through this effort. So traditional and cultural fire is in my mind is done by TEK tribal practitioners. So cultural burns are done by cultural practitioners versus a a prescribed burn is prescribed on through CAL FIRE and non-tribal entities. And that's what I have to share.
Wow. Thank you so much. That that was you and Diana, you could just tell that you're doing so much work on the ground, advocating for good fire, for cultural fire. We actually have a question that I think you both could speak to. So our question is, I live in Solano County, Yojadihi Wintun Nation land, and our neighborhood fire safe council government org seems open to good fire, but doesn't appear to be consulting with Indigenous practitioners, which is what Ali just spoke to. Do you have any suggestions for how community members can help get local entities to more thoughtfully collaborate with Indigenous practitioners and nations when designing fire stewardship plans? It sounds like there might also be some like logistical things to address, but you two are the experts. You're muted, Diana.
Okay. Hello. I'm thinking when it comes to getting to people, reaching out to the community, communities at large that like to do things are the ones you're going to want to reach to first, I think. Because they're leaders within their community that show up to certain events like if you have like Indigenous Days coming up, you know, who's going to go to the Indigenous Days? What's happening in their neighborhood? That would be the next best thing right now to reach out for, relating to people and asking them if they want to do this kind of thing and join us. And I'm not necessarily saying invite the whole population to a burn. I'm not saying that, but inviting the population and the ones who like to get out there and do stuff to event. And like Indigenous Day and those kind of events are happening. This is the season of events. The fall events that come up in every city and neighborhoods. Whether it's cleaning a creek or just kite day, putting a kite up in the air. Those are the places that you could do it in, and also posting these things at the fire departments themselves. Come in and that you might like to know this. Something I'm going to try pretty soon with the city of here in North Natomas, because we got Discovery Park and the bike parkway, that we could be doing something there to get a good start, whether it's just picking up garbage or anything. That's what would probably bring the first peoples together that just like to be out doing things, getting those kind of community figures, and then being able to take it a step further, like, well, we'll also be doing this. We'll also be providing a cultural sensitivity training. Or do you know of the Native people in the area? Do you know about what the language was? Would you like to know more of California Native people or the California wildlife? Being at nature centers and community centers like that is always the best way to reach those people that like to be out there. And in turn, they would attract others who like to be out there because they see what they're doing with it. They're seeing that they're having a good time. They're seeing that they learn something, you know. So that's what I'm thinking. And if you also let the broadcast companies know what you're doing, they'll come out and help out by doing videos. Our success has been a lot based on that. Channels coming out and making really nice commercials and having spots. There's a 15 spot on channel 3, 15-minute spot. So things like that happen. And that's how we get the word out. Not unless you're really involved in the community doing things, that would be the next step. So also our class. Our class was the big one that made people come out, the Keepers of the Flame. Because once the students got a taste of it, it didn't matter what background they had, they would come, and it was really nice to see that. And you want to know that, Carissa, right? Is that how you came out of class or something like that? But anyway, that's where I'm at, with it. You don't want to just make people come out and do it. You need to have the people that are willing to apply the discipline along with the fire. So, and that's working with Native people is probably the discipline, that is needed. Because it's not about, I'm going to go burn this because, I got 10 minutes. I got that much time. I could do it. It burns fast. We don't need those kind of thoughts. We teach them about fire, how powerful it is. You can't second guess it. Just like you can't second guess the next person next to you sometimes. Being very aware of what you're doing, and community bases are always the best, and reaching out to your local fire company too and find out if they know anything. So, or if they've joined something. So anyway, that's kind of like, I think, a really sensitive way to go about it. You don't want to attract people who are just in it for the picture, getting a good picture. That used to happen to me when I made boats. Whenever I made boats and Thule boats, and people come in, they come, all the channels want to see what you're doing. What does the boat look like? Who's making it? How's it made? And all these questions come up. And then when it comes time to get that boat in the water and start floating it, and it's kind of like, the first one out to sea or something. They're just ready to film it. And then I look around and there's nobody ready to carry the boat. I always thought that was funny. It's like, is there anyone could put down their camera to help? And, and I'm not just talking about, broadcast companies. It would be just a person with their camera, and they all want to get that shot. So it's kind of like that. You don't want just the looky-loos to be the ones that are getting the information. You want active people, who can actually think about it and apply it and know how to find those places. I get tips from people all the time. So, yeah, and that's just me in my grinding pit trying to make people more aware in our area. I'm not everywhere like Ali, where she could go everywhere and do that. And I'm just very happy with what I can do in the space we're in. So, so I'm glad to know, Ali, you're doing all that. And it must have been a relief for you too, hearing the 4 people on the panel yesterday. Yeah. So yeah. So anyway, I think I'll end with that. Thank you. I hope I answered the question.
And I'll just talk from I'm going to put my California Open Lands hat on as executive director of a land trust. A lot of times what happens is private property owners inviting natives to come work on their land and fix it up after the historical trauma is kind of like a little bit more salt and vinegar and maybe some lemon juice in a very opened wound. Because you're really asking folks, it's still mine. I hold title to it, but can you fix it up for me and make it safe so I can stay here forever with my family? And so, it feels good for community to be all out together. That's what Trex does a lot on private property, but these are usually extremely very wealthy families, and their generational wealth is linked to a lot of the, removal of the natives, by blood. So we're looking from one generation of pioneers and settlers inviting the survivors of genocide to come fix up the property of their land, and that's happening here in California under the invites under some of these, Trex programs or these community fire safe councils. So they haven't really like sat down and kind of ameliorated the real ask here. So I like to come in and say, well, if you're interested and you have private property, I'd love to do a cultural easement with you. And what that basically means is that we can do some conservation land on your private property. We'll do you some tax favors, um, and then when you pass away, you can write that this land goes back to the tribe and the cultural practitioners that have been taking care of it. So this means that whatever they take care of and have been burning stays with them after after you've passed away, in that agreement. And I think that's meeting some tribes in the middle. Like I said, if you're not looking for like a complete total insult and slap, but you want to look at some reciprocity and some reconciliation, then I'd be interested for California open lands for any private property owner to sit down, get that land to its cultural easement, get a land management plan, invite the tribe, put some funding on them, pay them to do the burns, pay the practitioner to do all of that stuff seasonally, and then keep that money there. And then when 20, 30, 50 years passes by, that stays with the tribe. And we've earned it then, right? We paid. And I don't mind doing it that way. I was raised that way. I can earn with what I got, and I'll work for it. And so, but I'm not gonna fight for it anymore like it was taken. In a way, I think we can make it an agreement. We've earned some respect for each other, and the time that we spend on the land, native and non-natives, to see and respect each other's knowledge of the land now, 2024. So that's my answer is push. I'm one of them. There's other ones. I'm one of the few. California Open Lands is one of the few land trusts here in California that go immediately to TEK methodologies of land work scopes. So every one of our work scopes has been redesigned to complement TEK foods, fibers, and medicines.
Oh,
Wow, thank you both so much. Um, and I think for that question, Diana is actually, what is your title at the Ochadihi?
um, well, my title is culture practitioner of
Mhm.
tradition, heritage, and experiences. So that's always been my favorite thing ever since in 1980. It was teaching the experience of being with the land, experience of using a plant, the experience of seeing a ceremony, experience of leading a special event. I want them there, and that's what it's always been about. It's like making sure I have traditional connection to what I'm doing. And so, like, my daughters are my traditional culture bearers that are coming up out of this, and then my oldest grandsons are starting to take that role too, and being out there and doing things and making things, and little do they know they're doing that. It may be the way they choose to go in their life, but it's also flexible for them to focus on things that they do too. Like, fixing cars, if that's what they want to do, fix up cars, specialty, or being a chef or something, anything. You can be all that plus cultural heritage to listen to your family and hear what they have to say and how they use their life. And they've seen it with me where I'll have a table full of paragraphs one day, then table full of soapwood the next day, table full of walnuts the next day, and I just moving cultural items across my table. Not so much now because my hands are not, they're little arthritic, but I deal with that too. I do the right thing for it. Try to eat better, and that's another thing is taking care of yourself because our Native people have always died young. The average lifespan of a Native person was like 50, and that's gone up from 48 for so long. And so just taking care of yourself too is so important so that you can be there for those young ones. Too many people are lost. Like I said, it's either that you're young and you die early because you're not handling life well, and then you're actually like an elder who eats right and lives their culture still and lives to the age of 110 or something, but my grandmother lived till 103. At least you could still count on yourself being there. You have to count on the fact that you might not. and make sure that you're passing on these traditions, so that it keeps it there. And so, like Allie, like you're talking about with the land, yeah, you're going to need those workers on that land, people who care and love that land. But anyway, it's just a real interesting way to behave in this environment, in an environment when there's not that many any indigenous people who know their land. There's so many people who don't know their land in California. So they make big mistakes. And we have to clean up those mistakes, cultural mistakes, like letting Himalayan blackberry go. That was a farm product brought here in 1949 because it grows good. What look what it did to the environment. It grew so well, it took off and underneath every tree or something. And that's the one we have to get rid of. It's the toughest one. And for many reasons, the toughest one. You don't want to fall in blackberry. That's for sure. So even when you're out, you need to be sure to take those measures to let everybody know what it looks like out there too. So these things can be taken care of. But beforehand, we weren't able to do that at all or even think about it. So thank you.
Thank you for those words. A lot of it resonated with me.
Oh, oh, good. Yeah. Yeah. There's so many people that still have their culture, and yeah, we have to be able to do it in a way that they highlight culture and letting people have that. Mhm.
Mhm. Yeah. Any last remarks, Sally?
I'm just gonna say, I appreciate everyone listening. Like I said, there is a lot of ideas out here. I hope that whatever information I spit out got to be written down into notes and inspire some thinking and thinking outside of the box, out of the silos of conventional colonial thought that have been presented, and then and listening to the wisdom of traditional ecological knowledge of our elders, of the people that are grassroots, feet on the ground, and thinking about that and dreaming up what we can do together. Thank you.
Yes, thank you for that. And so with that, um, the application is open until December 2nd. We look forward to hearing your ideas and supporting at least six teams, at least six innovator teams. And I hope that this inspires some ideas and help you think better about your projects and incorporating this deep knowledge from the land um, shared by Diana and Ali. So thank you so much. All right, have a good day,
So
everyone.